Hey everybody, Matt and Mike
What's
for the IronTrap podcast, Shooting the Breeze.
The haggle. We haven't decided on an official title. It's just the IronTrap podcast.
IronTrap podcast.
Whatever you guys want to call it.
So we're doing our audio-only podcast. We'll get the normal stuff out of the way in the beginning. If you are listening, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. And we thank everybody that stopped us at the last handful of shows and said that they listened to the podcast and enjoy it.
There was lots of positive feedback.
Yeah, we were.
I didn't hear one complaint, I don't believe.
Yeah, there's probably his complaints, but they didn't say it to our
exactly.
faces. So, but we did enjoy. I enjoyed particularly people saying that they liked the audio format because I was a little apprehensive. I wasn't sure if anybody gave a shit or whatever.
Even listened.
And we had a number of people. I had a young guy at Hershey, I think Wednesday, that stopped me and said he listens at work and he really enjoyed it and it got him through the day. So that's cool because we weren't sure and we really appreciate the feedback. So make sure you give us a review and all that good stuff on the podcast format. It helps us. We make $0, unlike YouTube. We do not make any money off of this. This is an extra way for us to just get content out there and hopefully get people to consume it and enjoy what we do. So
and if this is your first time listening, head to our YouTube channel. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there. We do a video format of a podcast every other Sunday. So head there and check it out if you haven't.
And all of our normal nonsense that goes on with finding cars and parts and fixing them, putting them on the road, and everything that goes with it. So if you're not watching the channel, it is way more badass than the podcast.
Listening to us ramble 100%.
So this week's topic is relevant, and also because it's fresh in our minds. We're going to talk about Carlisle and Hershey, and kind of like a wrap up of swap meet season in general. This is a much debated topic on social media with old guys and young guys with swap meets and the state of the hobby. And we're not going to get into the state of the hobby stuff. We did a podcast on that.
Yes.
But today we're going to kind of talk about some of our favorite stuff from Hershey, some observations, and everything else in between with Hershey and Carlisle, I should say. So Hershey ended for us yesterday, which was Thursday. The show is Friday. For anybody who hasn't gone to Hershey for a number of years, they moved everything basically up a day. So no longer is the show on the weekend. It is on Friday. And the swap meet pretty much ends on Thursday. They're asking people to be out of the swap meet by midday Friday. So now more than ever, the show is pretty much wrapped up by the evening. Thursday, it's going to be a ghost town on Friday. And we are pretty much, one of these days we're going to do the show and cover maybe some of the show in video format, but we're always so worn out from...
I did it one year.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
We did it 2021, I think, or maybe 19 we did it. But I did cover it one time. Maybe we'll do it again. It's been a couple years since we showed the show.
So that Hershey is always, the event we all look forward to, seeing a lot of people that we don't see except for once a year, foreigners, people from way out of town, and then also just the fun of buying and selling and seeing neat stuff. So Carlisle also, but especially Hershey. This part of the country during that 2-week period is like, it's kind of like it is for the Grand National Roadster Show in L.A.
Yeah.
The week or two surrounding that is like everybody that's into, old Fords and hot rods converges there. Here, it's anyone that's into an antique or classic car is kind of like all coming to this area. So there's Carlisle, there's Race of Gentlemen goes on the weekend in between. There's a racers swap meet at the EMMR, which is
forgot about that.
The Eastern Motorsports Museum,
something like that.
Eastern Motoring, Motorsports Racing. I forget the EMMR Museum, which is really great. They have a racers show swap meet, I think Saturday and Sunday, or maybe Sunday. So that's cool. So pretty much, and then of course Hershey after that. And then there's places like us, we do a little kind of semi-private open house, but there's a bunch of people that allow you to visit if you get in contact with them. So it's a pretty cool time.
It's like the most stressful 2 to 3 weeks of the year because there's just so much for us. There's just so much going on between those two. The week leading up to all the events, and this year was extra crazy because we were also moving a bunch of stuff before. But it's like those 2 to 3 weeks is just chaos of a lot of moving pieces of getting set up, tearing down, then setting up at Hershey, and then tearing down. And it's a lot of fun once we're at the swap meet and set up and everything's working like a well-oiled machine. But the steps leading up to all of it is absolute chaos.
Yeah, and this year, like Mike mentioned, we've been doing moving, and I kind of made the decision that we were going to do a big push, and the Wednesday before we left for Carlisle, we were going to move the last big majority of our inventory on that Wednesday, and we were leaving the following Monday for Carlisle. So Mike was in the middle of pricing things, and then we had to move like 50 pallets of stuff back to the new building. But I knew that it would be a lot easier to do it then because after Hershey and the Madness, we're usually all kind of like burnt out.
Yeah.
So it would have been harder to force ourselves to do that move after Hershey rather than before. So now we're 99% moved out of our warehouse space and into the new building.
That was probably the most asked question I got the entire 2 weeks. Everyone wanted to know how much we had left.
Did everything actually fit?
Yes.
Because no one thought that we were going to fit everything in, including us.
Yeah. Steve was very like, I don't think it's going to fit.
You guys, this isn't going to work. And I was playing it cool, but I was also a little worried as we were going. But it worked out. But as far as swap meet stuff goes, so I guess we can talk about the Carlisle and Hershey first, and then I might get into some more of the swap meet in general, buzzes, what we're seeing for trends and different stuff, and in both of our take on on the swap meet season and shows and stuff. So first of all, the swap meet crowd and the car show crowd are two different people. If you're not real in depth into this hobby, there is a distinctive split, and I've noticed it over years, of guys that are really only into the swap meet aspect of this hobby. And we've talked about before, how do you enjoy the hobby? Back to that kind of conversation. There are guys and gals that really I only ever see at swap meets. Like if you go to a show or there's both at an event, they'll either only congregate at the swap meet or they leave once the swap meet dies down. So by like 10 a.m., all the swap meet people are leaving because they were there super early, and the car show people are kind of rolling in.
Yep. And
it's two different crowds, and it's kind of interesting to see. And I kind of would put myself in the category of a swap meet person more because I don't enjoy the car show aspect as much. So I do. I'd rather, like we did at Hershey, I brought the DeLorean Roadster to the Hershey and drove it around as transportation and parked it at our booth. And like to me, that's always been like that's the best scenario where like we're at the swap meet, I'm driving the car and enjoying it. It's there for people to see, and that struck me like the first time I went to Grand National, or I'm sorry, the LA Roadster show. It was like guys had the coolest cars. Here comes Moon. Come on, buddy.
What's up, bud?
Sit down.
Hello.
So guys had the coolest cars you could think of in their swap meet space, and they were using it to commute. And I really enjoyed Moon.
Just batteries in there.
Can you get out of his lunch?
There's just batteries in there.
But guys had really cool cars at the LA Roadster show, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. It's like, man, that's the best. You got your car there, you're selling at the swap meet, you're hanging out. It's just a great time. So this was the first year I brought like a hot rod. We brought the red truck last year, but I couldn't really drive it around
because it was stuck in the space.
It was so big. And we brought the meat truck one year, but it was also kind of like big and stuck in the space. So it was just way more fun having an old car to take to dinner each night, to drive around.
And it was like the perfect weather for that this year too.
Once in a lifetime weather for Hershey. It pretty much always, we get some sort of rain. And this year it was all during Carlisle. So having the Roadster it was a bit chilly to drive early in the morning and late at night. But it was just fantastic. It was great having it there. So I think it would, and that was one aspect of Hershey I love, is you walk around and people have some of the cars they're going to show at the show in their space. Or
Yeah, it makes a swap meet really, really neat because it's not just tables of parts. You'll walk and there'll be like a Duesenberg just sitting in a swap meet space, and you're like, holy crap. And it's you kind of get the ability to look at some of the show cars without even having to go to the show. It's kind of neat.
Hey guys, it's Matt Clausen, your host of the All Automotive Podcast. I've been in the automotive industry for over 30 years. I've owned my own repair shop for the last 15 years. I was going to write a book, but I started this podcast instead. So come join me for my take on vehicle extended service contracts or what to look for when purchasing a used vehicle. Like and subscribe to the All Automotive Podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now.
Yeah, and like there's a guy over in, I think it's Greenfield, over by the Giants Center, he always brings Reading Standard motorcycles.
Yes.
And since I've been going to Hershey, I kind of remember him always having really neat bikes, and especially Reading Standards. And like for me, Reading, for anybody that's not familiar, Reading Standard Motorcycle Company it's like the closest major city to where I grew up, and very old city. And they made motorcycles in the, I think, teens and 20s, and maybe into the early 30s. But that's like a bucket list item for me. They're very, very expensive. If you think an old Harley is expensive, when you get into Aces and Reading Standards and some of them, they get very expensive. And he always has them on display there, and you can literally walk right up to them and kneel down, look at all the details. So like that's, I've really found myself this year doing more of that. Like rather than manically trying to find the best deals in the whole place, I was kind of like taking my time and looking at stuff and enjoying the conversations with people. Kind of like when I first started going to Hershey, and I didn't have as much money or wasn't as knowledgeable. I enjoyed talking to people and learning, and I kind of like full circle this year. So.
Yeah. So Carlisle kind of was a soupy mess this year.
Yeah.
It rained. So there's a gentleman that watches our channel that came by our booth. He said it rained. So Thursday was nice, but it rained 12 days straight
in Carlisle.
So we got there Monday, and it was a muddy mess. Got the tent set up in the rain, got the parts set up the next day in the rain, and then Wednesday was the first official shopping day, and it was miserable for 3 days.
Yes, and it's
not a lot of people set up. There were a lot of people with their parts there, but they didn't open because of the rain. We didn't really do that well selling both those days either, just because there was not many people there, unfortunately.
And that's the aspect that people don't realize with the business that we're in is that we prepare the same no matter what the weather is. So we still have to set up our giant circus tent and bring a giant trailer of parts. And because we kind of only do a few swap meets a year, and we do it big in those swap meets, it's a lot of effort. So it's very hard when we're setting up in the rain, because that we're not going to sell anything because nobody's there and everybody's also miserable. So it's kind of like a little bit of a bummer, but
thankfully for us with that big circus tent, we do sell parts when it's raining because we have the ability to be open, but we would be doing much better if it was a nice, sunny, decent day outside versus the rain. It's, we still sell parts, but it's not as good as we would hope.
And so there was just like, the swap meet was, and this is one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about when we get into swap meets in general. Carlisle became a giant mess very quickly because every Tom, Dick, and Harry has to drive their giant truck around and go shopping to try and find. So I'm looking at you, sign guys, you motherfuckers. Those guys running around in their pickup trucks and their Sprinter vans, tearing the grounds up. And like we did a little bit of driving, but it was very quickly obvious that like it was a super mess. So you needed to turn on the pavement, but not a lot of these reseller guys that are manic. They're running around, driving through spaces, and
with loaded pickup trucks too.
Yeah, and it's just like
tearing it up.
Everything was a soupy mess, and then these people were setting up in their spaces, and on Tuesday or Wednesday, and it's like a rutted up mess because these assholes were driving through in their truck, and it's like, I don't know. That's just the driving around in trucks and scooter thing at swap meets has become ridiculous. It's
and golf carts. It's gotten really, really bad.
People are lazy, and I can't believe. especially walking around swap meets, it's kind of ironic to me because when you go to swap meets, it's very much people that are shouting about how lazy kids are these days and people don't want to work and people don't want to do this. All you motherfuckers are lazy and you don't want to walk a swap meet. So every 20-something and up, it has to have a fucking scooter or a cart or something to ride around. You can't just walk. And it's one thing to ride a bicycle around a little bit, but you don't need – every person has a golf cart now or side-by-side or something, and it makes it so hard to walk around. And
I just walk in front of them. I don't get out of anyone's way.
I get it on setup day. Like, if it's pre-setup day, everybody's running around. It's not as big of a deal, but, like, these people are riding it the second day, the third day.
Thursday, like, at Carlisle, Thursday was a really nice day, and it was packed. There's people just, like, driving down the middle of the roads with golf carts and just in the way. And
they're able-bodied. That's the problem I have with it all. And it's kind of gotten ridiculous because it's just people riding around that shouldn't be. There's no need. I would love to ride around in a cart all day long, but
it's okay. They can ride around in a cart. They miss so much shit just blasting by a booth.
It's just the way it should be. It's
I 100% agree.
It's very difficult to see, and it's very hard to walk, and you're always having issues and with that stuff. So I part of it I wanted to sound off on it, but I think it's ironic because when you hear these people talking amongst each other at the swap meet, everybody's talking about how lazy people are and they don't want to work, they don't want to do this. They're the same people that are lazy and don't want to walk, so they have to ride in their golf cart around because they can't walk a swap meet like, you walk that's what you do. You walk a swap meet. But everybody's so worried with running around and trying to, score the craziest deal of the century that they can't just walk or at the very least ride a bicycle. At least it's not as
lazy,
intrusive into the walking through. So that was pretty bad this year. That the grounds were getting ripped up with all of that. But it ended up okay. We saw somebody that got stuck in the mud and
so I was talking to someone. There was a box truck that got stuck. I think the last show was Chrysler's at Carlisle. It got stuck then. It was like a box truck. It looked like the front suspension was totally collapsed on it. They showed up with a U-Haul, like a 10-foot U-Haul box truck. Just so you know, they're two-wheel drive, not four-wheel drive. Proceeded to pull the truck into the grass to try and pull out a stuck box truck that was filled with stuff. So, as you can imagine, the U-Haul got stuck. And then they couldn't get they unhooked it, and then they couldn't get the U-Haul out. We sat and watched for like 10 minutes because it was just hilarious. Two old dudes that should know how to get a car unstuck from the mud just buried a truck in the mud. It was
also probably ironic because those are probably the same guys that go to the diner and complain about young people not knowing how to do anything and get off their phone and do whatever.
So terrible.
But they weren't smart enough to just put their truck on the blacktop before you start pulling. So the box truck was just like swinging around all over the place. So we're like, what is going on? It was just like Three Stooges.
Oh, it was bad.
It was bad.
And it was there so long, the grass under it was dead, and they were literally cutting the grass around the box truck.
But somebody, I think, did end up saving them and helping them.
Yeah, we were dicks and just watched, and we refused to help.
I don't want to get involved because then we're tied in with those guys. So we didn't watch the whole time. We watched for a few minutes and then went on our way. But someone did help them and get them out with a bigger. I think they helped with a larger truck.
Yeah.
Pull them out, but they should have been on the pavement and they might have had a fighting chance. But wet grass, and it was raining as they were doing it too, so which is not great. So that was kind of entertaining. But otherwise, Carlisle was kind of, should say both swap meets were light this year. We had the hurricanes and the devastation and all of that. That's very sad and obviously affected everything. So we see a lot of people complaining or buzzing around the swap meets about how terrible Carlisle was, or we did not do well. I'll be honest with selling, we did pretty poorly overall. But swap meet people are very doom and gloom, which is kind of odd to me because it's supposed to be fun. But they're complaining. You heard a lot of that, how terrible Carlisle was, and it's I don't know if I'm ever going back and this and that. But like, there was a big chunk of America that got affected. Americans that got affected by the storms and. Whether you had a relative or you yourself, or maybe you had a summer home or other property,
or
whatever.
had to physically drive through that area.
Oh, yeah, true.
Like if your commute was through, I think it was I-40 that got washed out or whatever, it's like a giant detour to go around it. So it's a lot of people probably just like, I guess we're just not going to go.
Yeah, so there was down on shoppers and sellers, because of that at both Carlisle and Hershey, and I always take that stuff into consideration, as well as it rained almost every day. So it's kind of like you can't control the weather, you can't control that any which way, but then also having a major storm, and then there was one coming up to Florida as Hershey was about to go on.
Yes.
So there was people that probably stayed home because they wanted to, be close to their home, or, they had to do batten down the hatches type deal. So, but I think Carlisle was still, the one thing I like about Carlisle, a lot of people that are in the early stuff, like we deal in and we see, or we chase, is Carlisle people, a lot of times it's gotten a bad rap over the years that there's no early stuff there.
There's a ton of early stuff.
Yeah, there is, and it's just mixed in more. But I actually kind of enjoy it because you get some guys there selling stuff that, yes, they have mostly Camaro stuff or Corvette stuff or whatever, but then they'll randomly have like 3 steering wheels hanging from 30s cars, and it might be something amazing. And that's the fun of it. You got to hunt every space and look and dig in the boxes. So,
and even Hershey's starting to become like that too.
Yeah, you're seeing more 50s and 60s stuff.
Just stuff that's mixed in, which Carlisle, I enjoyed, like you said, it's the hunt. You got to really look in every space. You can't just walk by and be like, oh, the guy's got Camaro parts. It's like, if you just walk by, you're going to miss. Oh, my uncle had Model A parts, and there's a whole bunch of Model A stuff in the back of the booth. We figured no one wanted that.
Yeah. I've scored some of my best scores over the years at Carlisle that were from people that were not dealing in
100%
early Ford stuff. Or
hot rod parts even.
Yeah, true.
They just like, oh, my uncle ran a speed shop, and I brought all the leftover parts from the speed shop. It's like, oh, okay, let's take a look what you got.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody that's listening that goes to swap meets anywhere in the country, if you consecutively go to swap meets, you start to learn what vendors have stuff and which don't. So, I even kind of find myself there, oh, that guy always has just Corvette parts. So you kind of you don't even look at his space, and you just kind of power walk by. And sometimes those guys, one year, his neighbor will ask him if he can bring 32 parts, and he'll lay it out on the ground. So,
or they don't show up and they sublet their spaces to someone else.
Oh, yeah.
And you just have it in your brain that the dude that sets up here never has anything good or is really expensive, and he didn't come this year, but you never really look that close, and you just blew right by.
Yeah, and it's he sublet his space to his neighbor who had early stuff, and then that for 1 year. So yeah, that's true. I've had that happen before, where I walk by a space and you come back, that's not who's normally there. Whoa, he's got good stuff.
Yeah, Hershey's like that a ton.
Yeah, really.
People, even just not even subletting, people get different spaces in Hershey to try and get to a better spot or a better field. So we know a bunch of people that have been in 7 different, their spaces change every year because they're trying to get to a better spot. And you're like, wait, what are you doing over here? You're normally over there.
Yeah.
And the year before you were over there. And you got to look all the time. And I catch myself doing it all the time too.
Yeah. But Carlisle, I didn't, this year in general.
Both of us were
very reserved. I think doing that move the week before Carlisle gives us a reality check of how much stuff we have to not that we haven't even gone through, that we've bought, shrink wrap, palletized, and it's just sitting there that we could go through and do our own picking within our own stuff. So this year I was much more reserved, especially with the stuff that we normally we call our bread and butter stuff. So, mechanical items that we buy, not huge profit margin, but it's stuff that we sell regularly. We kind of were like, oh crap, we just filled a shelf with 50 of them. Even if this one's really cheap, we probably should buy it because we got 50 to sell, So we were pretty reserved. I think my best thing at Carlisle I bought was from some early Ford guys. And I went to and this is another thing, I go and stop with, there's people I stop with every single time to talk to. And these guys, I buy something random from them every year, most years, but I stop just to have a good conversation with them. And I'm standing there for 10 minutes having a conversation. I look over in the back of the booth on the table, and there's a Kong, 1.5 Kong distributors.
And this goes back to not walking in every booth, because I just walk by their booth because they're early Ford dudes. So I very rarely go in and look for anything because they know what they
the
have.
Prices are what they should be.
Yep.
So you're not going to score a crazy deal. But I stopped there because they're actually really nice guys. They watch our
super
channel.
Nice. I usually stop way later in the week to bullshit.
Yep. But I stopped and just talking to them, and like I said, 10, 15 minutes into the conversation, look at a table. There's a Kong distributor, which for hot rodding and flathead parts, that's a holy grail, so to speak, ignition part. Kong Jackson made a lot of really cool parts back in the day. This is like one of his earliest thing that he did. And I have one on the DeLorean Roadster. It was like a, holy grail find. We found it in Oregon, in that Bonneville Racers or Dry Lake Racers attic.
I forgot about that.
And in all these years, I hung on to it. I had it redone. Just at the end of the summer, I put it on the DeLorean Roadster, and it's so kick-ass. Kong Distributor is like a one-off piece, not one-off, but he made a run of these distributors, and they use like a Packard or Lincoln or Duesenberg dual coil rotor distributor, all those Bakelite parts. And they're very sought after. So he had one sitting there. And if you don't know what they are, or you don't know, if you're not into flatheads, it just looks like an old distributor. But it was cool to find that. And the gentleman that had it was very affordable. And he said he had been looking for a cap for it for, I don't know, many years. And he gave up and he said, I'm just going to sell it. So we luckily have a spare distributor cap that we had on the table we were trying to sell.
Yep.
So I have enough parts to put it together. So I was pretty excited. We'll probably have another spare one, luckily, that we got with a recent buyout. So probably both of those I'm going to have them redone, and one of them we're going to offer for sale, so that like turnkey that somebody can put on a car and use, which is really cool. I'll keep a spare in case I need it for something else, and just to have in a case. So that was my cool find. I don't know if you had anything.
I didn't. Probably the coolest thing, I bought a Paps bar display, which is kind of neat.
Oh, yeah.
The only hot rod part I found was a 32 Packard V12, one of the amp gauges like you used in the... Walking by a dude just randomly selling like 60s Stuart Warner gauges, and there was a V12 Packard gauge sitting on the table. Mixed in for $20.
Nice. Yeah.
So I just plucked that off the table and paid $20 for it, and we'll probably add that to the stash to resell one day, but that's probably about it.
Yeah,
I was not hunting normally I buy like stock parts because I know the prices a lot better than Matt. So I'll walk around and buy gauges and just good stock parts that we sell all the time. And we have so much of it. I saw a bunch of stuff. I was like, well, we got 4 or 5 of those. We got 1 or 2 of those. It was just much more reserved this year.
Yeah, so we definitely bought other stuff, but that's kind of was like the cliff notes of, the stuff that we saw. As far as like cars and stuff in the swap meet, I noticed at Carlisle there was more early cars.
Off-brand early cars.
Yeah, for sale. Usually Carlisle doesn't have a lot of early stuff for sale as far as cars or projects go. And this year seemed like there was a lot. There was a bunch of Model A's.
That early Buick. I think it was Buick with the golf door.
Yeah, it was like a 3-window, I don't know, 31 or 2.
I think it was a 29.
Oh, was it 29?
Yeah.
Okay, Buick.
There was that early 4-door DeSoto.
Yep.
That was really neat. There was probably 5 or 6 early cars that were very off from the normal at Carlisle. Mm-hmm. A shit ton of deliveries.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I maybe it's just now we got one. I noticed some more, but at Carlisle there was like 3 or 4 delivery projects.
Yeah.
And they weren't just early Ford. There was 50 Chevy ones. There was I think they were mostly GM.
Yeah.
But it was just like, what the heck's going on? All of a sudden there's deliveries. But
you're the delivery.
Maybe we're just noticing it more because we got one. So that was kind of cool. And most of them were pretty affordable.
Like $4 to $5 grand.
And they needed work, but I thought that was pretty interesting to see such rare projects that were so affordable. But yeah, I think the show was pretty good. I think, and in the end, the best thing about Carlisle was we took my dad's the car we put together for my dad. I got money falling out of my pocket.
I was wondering what that.
I'm making deposits into the couch here. So, but yeah, so I maybe a month before Carlisle and Hershey, my father comes to stay for a day or two once a month, for a couple of days, maybe like once a month, and hang out. And the last time he was here staying with me, I kind of had the conversation with my dad. I said, look, you're not really driving the car. You don't, with everything just with everything that's happening in his life, he hasn't been coming up as much as he would like. And I said, I've been paying insurance on it. Now that we got this delivery, it's kind of like, well, I got another car, a keeper, that I'd like to keep upstairs. So I kind of said to my dad, do you think it'd be okay if I sold the car? Do you care? And he didn't really care too much. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't upset with me for doing it. So he said, yeah, I'm not really using it and, blah, blah, blah. So we started building the car. My dad was living in Florida, so he would come up here in the summers and stay up here all summer. So there was a lot more opportunity for him to use it. Now he lives in Delaware, which it's a 3-hour commute each way. And my dad's just not, and he has 2 cars down there already, so he's kind of like, and no garage where he's living. So it's kind of like, I don't really have a need for it. His life's pretty simplified these days, so it's like we got rid of it. So we took it to Carlisle at the 9th hour. We
decided to stuff it in the trailer we use it mostly as a shipping container, filled it full of parts.
Well, first of all, we thought I had this pipe dream of let's bring it down to the shop. We'll spend a day or 2 more on it, and we're going to spray it flat black or get it all one color, put the trim on it, fix all this odds and ends stuff that, that we've been meaning to do, and then we can get more money for it. And it was like, then we brought it down, and Steve and I started looking at it. We're like, we're going to open a can of worms, and 2 days is going to turn into 2 months.
And we're never going to take it to Carlisle to sell it.
Yeah, so we decided just to put it in. And Steve even made a comment like, is it really going to make us that much more money to do that? And special uninvited guest, Moondog, is on the couch now. It wasn't going to make us much more money, so we decided just to bring it along. And at the very end of the show, like Friday afternoon, we were about to pack up. A guy came by, and Mike started up for the guy and woke me up from a nap.
Matt was so over Carlisle, he was asleep in the swap meet space.
And he started it up, and then the guy came back again, and next thing we know, Mike sold it. We practically gave the thing away.
Yeah, very cheap.
Everybody, we always get asked for pricing. This is one I can talk about a little more freely. We had $8,500 on it, which I think for a turnkey, get in it and go fun old car was very affordable, and we ended up selling it for $6,000. So
and for anyone that complains, I put it on Facebook Marketplace like 2 weeks before we took it to Carlisle and Hershey. I put it on our Instagram, and I had a bunch of like dumb trade offers for it.
4-wheelers, snowmobiles.
I got a Fox Body Mustang. Just a bunch of dumb shit. Terrible lowball offers for like $4,000 or $5,000. So it was out there publicly. We didn't just like not tell anyone we weren't taking it.
And this is a good instance also that sometimes I hear people say about us or to us, like, oh, those guys are really expensive, or they whatever, the top dollar, this and that. We oftentimes price things for other people to make money. So this was a good example. $8,500, I think, with a tiny bit more work, you could make that a $12,000 car by doing the stuff we were talking about. Make it one color, put the trim on it, fix this, fix that, and you could make some money. And then what the guy ended up buying it for, he could just basically resell it again and make more money. And it is what it is. I didn't have a lot of money into the car. We're fortunate with the channel that we make some money off of the YouTube videos. So when I start calculating a car and what we have into it, if you start looking at the money we made from the videos, you kind of take that off of what you spent on the car. So it ended up being that we didn't make a ton of money on the car, but we needed the space. So the guy that bought it, I think he was going to take it to Florida and tinker on it.
Yeah, he's a snowbird, just like your dad was. I'm currently in Moon's Way. So he's going to plan on taking it down to Florida, tinkering with it, and driving it down there. So hopefully he enjoys it.
Or resells it, whatever he wants to do with it.
We now have a parking space up here, which is the important thing.
Yeah, and I was just very sad. I was very happy that we sold it there because it was not a good week to try and sell a car because it was rainy and there wasn't a lot of people there. So
it turned our week around, definitely.
It did. So I'm happy to see it gone. My dad made a comment to some people at Hershey, I guess, when Mike overheard him saying that, like, I can't believe they sold it that quick. It's like, well, we sold it really cheap. I mean,
the fall is kind of not the right time to sell a vehicle like that.
Yeah.
That's definitely more of a spring seller. But, we need the space. It's tight up here as it is, and there's, 2 or 3 cars downstairs that, are not far away from being
up here again. So that went, and I made it really, really good. And it was like the very end of the show. I mean, in fact, we were we were packing up and went to the notary half an hour before they closed to do the title stuff with the guy. And, so it was like end of the day, but it worked out great. Happy to see it go. And
the most important thing is Matt didn't have to drive it home.
Yeah, I did. I was so over the week and just was not excited to make it home. And it was starting to rain on and off again Friday. So we're like, oh God, no.
Yeah, we were talking about it because we weren't going to take it to Hershey because it's kind of not the crowd for that kind of car.
Yep.
And to put it in the trailer, you got to fill full of parts. And then for us to take it out the next day, it's like you got to pack the trailer, unpack the trailer, unload the car, then repack the trailer. Matt was going to take one for the team and drive it home, thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully I didn't have to, and I could just ride in the passenger seat and just
take a nap on the way home.
Yeah. So, so that was gone. I ended up skipping Race of Gentlemen because I just had so much stuff to do at home, and this seems to happen every year. I'm always like, I'm gonna go, and then then I get burnout, or we just have so much to do I can't make it. So one of these years, gonna make plans. Also, I'm a huge procrastinator, so I didn't start looking for a hotel until like the Sunday before
Carlisle.
Before Carlisle.
I mean, you did the same thing with the hotel for Hershey as well. You also waited till like the Wednesday of Carlisle to find it.
But luckily, Hershey isn't as bad. You know, down at Wildwood, it was like Kate and I were going to do like 2 or 3 nights, and it was going to be like, I don't know, $1,000 or $1,500, and I was
crazy.
like, just for the hotel, and I'm like, I don't know. So one of these years. But I heard that they had really great weather. Everybody that we talked to that went had a fantastic time. I heard the crowds were huge.
Yes.
Really cool to see that show, they had some bad luck with weather. Again, back to the same thing with weather. And I can't imagine the rumor mill that they deal with what's going on and, all that stuff. We hear it in our booth, all the hot rodders coming in and whispering about whatever. So I'm really happy to see that show did well. And they had great crowds, and hopefully that's gets things going again, because they had 2 or 3 years of not great weather and all that complications. So hopefully next year it's just as big and great weather, and it continues on.
Yeah, maybe next year Steve and I will handle the booth, and you can take a couple days off and go down to
that would be awesome.
Race of Gentlemen.
I would really enjoy that. Thank you, boss.
No, not a problem. We'll let you make sure you submit the vacation form to HR. We'll get it approved. Moondog will come help us take the tent down, right?
That's right. So then we had Hershey. Hershey is always exciting. We did it a little different this year because I was bringing a car. I left from my house. Mike and Steve left from Mike's place and headed down. And I actually left a little later. One thing that's difficult, I love Hershey. The only couple things that I find a little frustrating or difficult is that Hershey, Swap Meet, AACA, they, for whatever weird reason, they don't let you in till like a certain time. And maybe
7 a.m.
7 a.m. on Monday. And I don't know if maybe I'm wrong. I shouldn't be one of the people that complains without knowing, but like maybe it's because the Hershey, Hershco or whatever doesn't let them actually have the park till 7 a.m.
I actually found out some people snuck in. Like they get there Sunday night real late, and they can just sneak in, and that's why when we get there in the morning, there's people already set up, because they get there the night before and just sneak in and
they
park.
just drive in because there's nobody there.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I mean, it is what it is. And if more people start doing it, they're going to just put barriers up Sunday night. But it's Saturday morning is always a dance, Monday morning, of what, because they'll turn you away. If you get there before 7, they'll turn you away, and you have to drive around the block. You can't line up and block the road. So there's this dance of what time you get there so that you're not in like 2 hours of traffic.
Yeah.
So I decided to leave later to kind of let the first rush get in. And you guys...
on Monday, I think it's 8 a.m. is when they let you in.
Yep.
And they were letting some people... This year, they actually weren't that bad. The one day Steve and I rolled in, Swap Meet, they're not supposed to let anyone in until 7. The one day we rolled in at 6:45, and they were letting people in.
Oh, good.
So maybe they were a little
They're
lenient.
loosening up.
There were some years that I showed up at like 6:55, and they were like, you can't drive around the block. So we'd have to literally drive around all the way around Hershey Park and come back in again because we were 5 minutes early. But anyway, we showed up at 8 o'clock, and they play the national anthem every morning at 8 a.m. And Steve and I literally pulled in. We're like, what is everyone sitting here for? No one's moving. And I just hear like the faint noise outside, and I roll my window down. I was like, we're going to be here for a minute. They're playing the national anthem.
Yeah. As rightly so.
Yeah, but it was like, so it took forever to get in. But we have to get in early because we park our trailer sideways across the back of our spaces. And if we wait for anyone to show up around us, there's literally no way we can get the trailer in. So we got lucky, got in, and it was empty in our field. And we just backed in and started setting up and waiting for Matt and his dad to show up to help us set up the space.
So that was one of the funny parts. Was I didn't tell my father should know by now that I'm just loose cannon. He never know what the hell I'm going to do. So I made the decision to drive the Roadster like Sunday night because we were looking at the weather, and I'm like, I had the idea, but I was like, well, if the weather's going to be shitty, we don't have a top for that car yet. I'm like, I don't want it being sitting in the booth in like monsoon weather. So Sunday, I like looked at the weather and I'm like, yep, gonna drive the car. So my dad gets here and he brings his giant e-bike that he wants to roll around the show in, like on setup day or whatever, because we have our old school bicycles, but my dad's a bit heavy set and is stiff, and riding a vintage Schwinn is not really great for him. He's a little wobbly.
I'm a little wobbly on it.
Coaster brakes. He's kind of like, he wasn't loving it last year. So he brought his e-bike, and I'm like, Dad. So I guess I get it from him because he didn't tell me he was bringing his e-bike.
Yeah.
So also,
it runs in the family. Multiple things run in the family.
Not great at communicating. So I was like, Dad, you got to leave this home. We're driving the Roadster. What do you mean? I'm like, we're driving the Roadster. Okay. So so we got in it and rode out, and that was actually that was probably the first longer highway driving with the Columbia setup all done with the mechanical 2-speed linkage and everything we hooked up. And I've driven it around a bunch this summer, taking half-an-hour trips, whatever, and putting on the highway. But like a lot of times you're constantly getting in and out of the Columbia. So this was cool to like drop the Columbia in overdrive and spend an hour on the highway just cruising. And the thing did awesome. So my dad was kind of stuffed in there like a sardine, but he didn't complain, and the weather was nice. So we got in, pretty much breezed right in for the most part. It was a little traffic, but
once the rush is done, it's a steady trickle the rest of the day of vendors coming in.
But again, this year I was not as manic, so I got on my bike and rode around, but wasn't like buying cars or giant piles of shit in the first 5 minutes.
It was nice to set up the booth without a pile of parts in my way of random shit that you bought right away.
So I rode around all day on the bike, and I usually try and hit the whole swap meet and just look for something exciting. I didn't find anything super exciting on setup day. I don't really remember what.
Bought an Evans intake and that.
Was that setup day?
Yeah, the 37 fender.
Yeah. But the one thing I will say that is kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of people know us now, and a lot of people also know that we're suckers and they can do package deals.
Yep.
So this gentleman, he's been to the shop to visit, and he has a lot of stuff. And I stopped in his booth and said hello, and he's pulling parts out. And he's got an Evans 3.2 intake for flathead, which is a pretty neat one. And I'm to ask him a price, and it's good. I'm going to buy it. And then he goes, but you can't just buy one item. I'm not letting you out of here, so you can't buy that intake unless you buy more. So he's like, I got 37 parts. You got to take all the 37 stuff in this. I'm like, I really don't want to. So I got out of it by making a package deal and buying. He had like a stack of headlight lenses, and we have
a giant
stack. So I ended up buying a fender, a really nice deluxe dash,
and glove box lid,
and maybe there was something else I can't remember.
Hood sides.
So it was 3 hood sides. So luckily, most of the stuff was actually pretty nice, but that was a theme I found throughout the week. Maybe it was specifically me. A lot of guys were going up to recognize me if I asked for a price. They're like, well, no, you got to buy a bunch of this stuff. And I'm like, I realize we do that in videos a lot, but that isn't the only way I like to buy, and especially this week.
Yeah, swap meets, it's more onesie, twosie.
I'm not buying you out of your booth.
Yeah. How much would we give me for everything?
I'm not rolling around Daddy Warbucks trying to buy everybody's booth out as much as people might think. I'm not rich. Yeah. So we ran around and we bought some stuff. But yeah, I bought a cool Evans intake. It's a marine intake, so not as good, but it's a 3.2 Evans, and it could be milled down or put spacers on it to even the carbs out. And we did it was really slow on Monday. Normally Monday people are like, the booth is just like mobbed with people trying to see what you're getting out of the trailer. I mean, a lot of booths are like that. People are running around like maniacs. And Hershey's so big, it doesn't seem as poor. It doesn't seem as annoying with people running around with vehicles and golf carts buying. It's more spread out. So that doesn't seem nearly as bad. Carlisle is bad because it's got these narrow rows you go up and down, and it's really hard. Carlisle doesn't seem as bad. But running around, it was there was a lot of neat stuff getting put up, but we didn't get the sales we normally do.
Yeah, I think we sold 3 items the entire day for under $100.
Yeah, that's pretty poor compared to normalies. But again, it was an off year. They even made an announcement that there was a lot of cancellations due to the hurricanes and impending hurricanes. But I ran around all week, and it was all Monday, and it was there was a lot of neat stuff. But it's there is no, if you ever want to go to Hershey, there's no. I tell a lot of people, if you're not already a vendor at Hershey, to go on Monday isn't really the best.
It's tough.
Day. It's tough because there's
giant. I mean, Carlisle's the same way. There'll be a row, and some of the rows in Hershey are pretty long, and there's
one vendor,
and you got to ride 3/4 of the row down to see what they have, and it's ratchet straps.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. So I would say if you're not vending or you got nothing better to do, Monday is not. I mean, yes, there's a lot of guys pull some really cool stuff out on Monday that's in the back of a guy's trailer, but you really got.
That also happens on Tuesday though, because a lot of people pull in Monday night.
Yeah, the Hershey's. There's so much to buy at Hershey and see that I feel like everybody gets a fair shake. There's really no. I mean, there's definitely guys that are better at it, that are running around like maniacs. They put a ton of miles on power walking, and they find great stuff. But you could also show up on Thursday and only shop Thursday, and you'll find a guy that for whatever reason is only setting up on Thursday.
Yeah, or wants to sell. His stuff was a little bit higher priced, and he's willing to wheel and deal more on the quote-unquote the last day.
Yeah.
And like you bought something on the last day for almost half of what the dude had on it.
Yeah, and I didn't lowball him. So there was
he started it out low.
Yeah, so there was I didn't buy much this week. I bought a bunch of stuff, but I didn't buy as much as other years. And I guess other years I was buying a lot more fun stuff for me, and I'm trying to get a little better. I have so much myself in the as we call it, the museum upstairs, and it's getting to a point where like I have so much, unless it's like really like holy grail stuff or it's so cheap, there's no need for me. So I was being pretty good. So there was a guy that had only a couple of rows over from us, had a 31 or 2 Cadillac Dash with the gauge insert. That's like,
it's so killer,
super cool. It's kind of like an oversized 32 dash panel or a 32 Lincoln panel, if you're familiar with that. And it had all the gauges, the dash. It's got the engine turn piece and these brass surround. Super cool. And of course, the guy's selling Cord stuff and Duesenberg parts and whatever, which again is what I love about Hershey. Everybody's mixed together. So the guy next to him is selling, flathead Ford parts. And so I looked at a tag, it was like $1,700 for this dash. And sure, it's really cool, and it's probably worth that because it's like V16 Lincoln or something.
They're like $500,000 cars.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, that seems fair, but I couldn't justify it. So I walked by that thing like 100 times that week.
Talked about it about 100 times.
Yes, and I stopped every time and touched it and looked at it and looked at the price again. And then I just felt like a dick because I wanted to pay like $1,000 for it. And even that, I was kind of wincing at paying. But it's like, that's the fair price. So I didn't even, make an offer. I didn't even talk to the guy because I didn't want to waste his time. So then I finally, on Thursday, I'm like, I'm going to just walk over. So I walk over and look at it.
I told him like 5 times, just go buy the dash. Shut up and just go buy it.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to spend the money. I walked over and the guy, saw me, instantly identified me as a hot rodder, like in the first 3 seconds. And I touched the dash. He goes, I'll give you a heck of a deal today, which we do the same thing when people walk up and we want to get rid of it on the last day. And I said, oh, all right, whatever. And he goes, that would look great in a 32 Roadster, mounted in a 32 Roadster. I'm like, how'd you know? I'm like,
I've seen a sucker before.
Yeah, I'm like, how'd you know? Obviously I don't look like I have a V16
Yeah,
Cadillac.
you don't strike me as that type either.
So I looked at it, and he instantly, it's like, he had like 1,700 on. And the guy's like, how's 1,200? I'm like, holy crap, that's a big jump instantly. So, I felt like the door was open. So I'm like, how's 1,000? And he's like, okay. So, and then he proceeds to tell me, I'm from California. I drove all this stuff out here. And he's like, I wanted, that was something big in his booth. He's like, I wanted to see that go. So I got that dash. It's super cool. Much like the ruined Roadster, where I put those really good gauges and really good dash panel. I think that's one of the things in a better car, you put better stuff in. So I would save that dash. And if I had a 32 3-window or 33 4 or a 32 Roadster, like, that's the car you put that dash
100%.
in. So I'm going to put that aside, and when I get the right car. But the best part was all the gauges are in it, and they're all decent, so they could be run as is or restored. But finding those gauges, onesie, twosies, I'm finding can be very expensive.
Temp gauge had the capillary tube on
Yeah.
it. It wasn't cut.
So to me, I started adding it up, and I think in my head, well, any vintage dash panel, when you see them for sale on a Part Swapper, or you see it in the ham when they're for sale, and you see an Auburn panel, or you see a Pierce Arrow panel and it has the gauges in it, not including the dash. This is the complete dashboard. Just the gauge panel with gauges, $2,500, $3,000. So I'm like, $1,700 wasn't really that bad, but $1,000, there's no way this. I think the dash panel on its own with no gauges in it would have been $1,000 or more.
100%.
So I'm happy to have it. So now I got a range of gauges and gauge panels and dashboards to put in stuff when the time comes.
That was probably the best thing you bought all week, I would say.
I think that was the most exciting for myself. I didn't buy a lot. And then the only other thing I bought, and that was on setup day, was I bought a 26-27
Oh, I forgot.
T turtle deck.
We just picked it out of the truck, too. I totally forgot about it.
So that so the backstory on that, I have a 32 Ford Riley 4-banger engine with a Riley 4-port overhead valve conversion. I've had it for honestly, it's probably one of the first like holy grail items I got when I started getting heavy into this stuff.
We were still building the free T at that point.
Yeah, and I got that engine, and I've been sitting on it, and my whole idea was to put either a 26.7 T Roadster or a 28.9 on 32 rails, either one of those, and do kind of like an early 4-banger hot rod. So I was walking to Swap Meet. We walked by Titus's booth. If you're into early Fords, everybody knows Jeff. He is kind of like in our age group, he is the guru. He knows and done everything and has found some fantastic stuff. And he's one of those guys at Hershey and Carlisle, or Hershey. He walks crazy miles and finds crazy stuff because he just puts the time.
He leaves Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah. Like he shops for like 24, maybe 1 or 2 days or a day and a half, and he finds more than a lot of us find in like 4 days. He's just on it. So anyways, I walked over towards his booth to visit with some friends, and he's walking over with this freaking 26.7 T turtle deck.
Beautiful turtle deck.
Beautiful shape, original black paint, still has the original floor in it, and deck lids on it. It's like, holy crap, this is amazing. He sets it down, and he puts tape on it. He's going to mark it up like we all do that at Hershey. And he's like, man, I got this thing for $300 or $350. I'm like, holy crap, what a find. What are you going to ask? And he's like, $1,200. And I'm like, oh, man. And it's typical dealing. He's like, how's $800? And I'm like, fine. But my thought process was the 26.7 Ts the turtle decks are very expensive. They're way more. Even $1,200 was a pretty good deal. It was like half of what I see guys asking for ones that nice. They're much more integrated into the body than the earlier Ts. And I felt like if I didn't grab it, later in the week I was going to see an original black paint tub.
Which someone did come to the space, like a day or two later, saw the tub and said, or saw the turtle deck and said, "I have a bunch of tubs for sale." And Steve gave him a card. So it kind of.
Let's hope that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was my thought. Hopefully, if I hold out, because this engine and this project is down the line, and I'm not in any hurry. So now I have a turtle deck, and if I could find like a nice tub, and I pay $100 or $1,000, and I get into a original black paint 26.7 T Roadster body that's solid or super nice, I could put together a really cool car, because I just love old black paint cars is just it, especially when you get into a T or a Model A Roadster or 32. So that's the goal. So we'll put that on top of the new office.
We'll put that in storage for the time being.
It'll go there, and now in the back of my head, I'm searching for that. It happens quite often. You see like an old Roadster pickup or something, and it's got the tub and maybe a rolling chassis, and it's $1,200.
Yeah, Model Ts. That's even the 23 to 5. They're the same way. The turtle decks are always missing.
Yep. So I got that. I was pretty excited about that. That's for a someday project. And at least I have some sort of inkling of using it on something.
Yeah.
I was trying to be better this year now about not buying stuff that I couldn't even fathom what I would put it on. Just buy it because it's neat. Yeah. I get in a bad habit of that at Hershey. Like, whoa, that's like the end of the week on Thursday. I was walking back from the bathroom, and there was a chrome like Tri-5 Chevy maybe.
Yeah.
Chrome. Hey. It's just a car. Guard dog. Quiet. Enough. Go back to sleep. Hey. So. Moving the guard. Stay here. Moving the guard tug.
Being kicked.
Come on, man. You're a jerk. Enjoy Moon being a guard dog for no good reason.
I'm sure that the microphone had to pick him up snoring. It was snoring pretty loud.
So at least that I had an inkling of using it for something. Normally, I'm buying. Oh yeah, that rear. So there's the Tri-5 rear that was chrome. Pulled it out of an old Model A, and I went over and looked at it. And it was cheap. It was like $400 or best offer, and it was Thursday at the end of the day. So I bet it would have been much cheaper. And I'm like, and I'm looking at it, and I measured it and got the gear ratio, and I was like, and luckily, I got distracted as we were end of the day, and we were packed up, and then I realized I forgot about it, and I didn't buy it.
Yep, just hopped in the Roadster and rolled out.
Rolled out because I didn't need the distraction. But normally, other years, I would have bought that chrome rear because, and then whatever. So there was a lot of that stuff I resisted. So what you found a couple cool things for yourself?
Yeah, I found. So I found a pair of Lincoln Zephyr taillight lenses.
Ooh, yeah.
38, well, not taillight lenses, complete taillights, lenses, bezels, and buckets. I was going to potentially save them for myself for a someday project, but I just put them on the table for the FU price.
And to be fair, I looked at, this is another one of those things that happened. I held those in my hand. It was a guy that was selling Lincoln parts, Zephyr parts, and K model Lincoln stuff. And I literally held them in my hands, looked at them. I was like, the price I thought was about right on what they were. Mike buys them for that price, and he tells me about them. I'm like, oh, I looked at those. I thought they were, there's no money left on them. He goes, no, I think there's, So I thought they were expensive, or not expensive. They were priced right.
Yeah.
And Mike's like, no, I think there's money in it. So he puts the FU price, sets them down, and then
a gentleman from California that's into Zephyrs picks them up, and we haggle. We made a couple $100 on them. I didn't make a killing. Made a couple $100.
A couple $100 on like walking it across the field.
Exactly.
That's one of the beauties of Hershey. And even though people hate on that idea, it happens a lot at Hershey where you see a guy buy something for cheap or reasonable. He thinks he can get more, puts it in his booth, and because he has the clientele that comes into him, they buy it, and he makes some money. So like and it's here's a good example of Mike did that, and people shit on us for doing that kind of stuff. I gladly bought that turtle deck from Titus, and he made $500.
Yeah.
And I wasn't mad about it. It's just how it goes. I would have been happy to find it for $300, but I'm happy to also pay because I could use it. So Mike, a guy that's in the Zephyrs, lives in California. he's probably going to take it to California.
He's going to take it to California, mark it up another $200,
and he'll make money.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I was initially going to just hang on to him, but I was like, I'll put him on the table. We didn't have any cool taillights really that we brought, just like normal stock stuff. We didn't have any cool hot rod lights. So I was like, I'll price them, put them on the table. If they sell, they sell. If they don't, I'll put them on my shelf for someday for a cool project. But I'm not mad that they sold. We made a couple bucks, and they're technically going to the right place. And those taillights are super hard to find complete. You always see bezels and lenses, like randomly. To have two complete taillights is very, very hard to find. So.
Yes.
And then I also found two cool beer signs, two locals beer companies to us. I found like a tin over cardboard sign and a small porcelain sign that I'll be probably hanging on to for right now, just because I had to scratch the itch. I haven't bought any beer stuff in a while, so
you've been pretty good.
I relapsed and had to buy something. Hershey, I always find beer stuff at Hershey, whether it's to resell or keep for myself. So that was on Wednesday, like afternoon, just randomly walking by, and that stuff doesn't really sell at Hershey because it's not that crowd. So it's like, yeah, I'll buy them. They'll hang on the wall for now until I find something cooler or trade someone for them. So that I didn't really find anything super crazy. We were both very well behaved. There's probably, besides the dash and the turtle deck, everything else we bought fits in a small cardboard box.
Yeah, I bought a banjo steering wheel for reasonable on setup day.
Bought a 35.6 windshield, just bread and butter stuff. 35.6 windshield regulator, just stuff that we normally sell that are, it's not hard to find, but find one that isn't broken is a little tougher.
Yeah, so all the other stuff was just, pretty common stuff. But the one good thing about Hershey and Carlisle is we do get a lot of people we talk to that we get potential leads and stuff like that.
And potential. Oh, dude, he is on. You're on me.
Come here.
It's okay. And sales. We probably gave out close to 400 business cards.
Jeez.
Between Carlisle and Hershey, which I'm sure that won't all turn into sales directly, but it's helpful. Every year we bring all the shit that we bring. Half of it is not what people are looking for.
Yeah, you never.
Steve, my phone just blows up all day long with Steve texting me. Do we have X? Do we have Y? Do we have Z? And all of it's no. It's at the warehouse. No, we don't have it. No, we didn't bring it.
Carlisle, we did really good with. Luckily, with people that were asking for stuff, like, oh yeah, we have it. Will you be here tomorrow?
Yes.
And we were every day when we were coming back from Carlisle. We would, or the morning before we would leave, we would be getting stuff out of the new building, and Mike's bringing it. And it was all like a torque tube and a drive shaft for a banjo reel. Like, we would never bring that swap meet, greasy, big stuff, and somebody needed it. So it was like a bunch of that stuff that we grabbed, brought. And,
Carlisle, it's very convenient because I pick everyone up. Steve comes to my house, we pick Matt up, then we run to Carlisle. So on the way home, dropping Matt off, we're here every morning, every evening. It's easy just to grab whatever we need to bring it. And there was a bunch of stuff. I don't know. I probably made 5 or 6 sales of people just asking for random stuff. So it worked out. Having the building here is very convenient.
Yeah, and we also, another good trick with if you guys are ever selling or doing any of it, Carlisle Hershey, a lot of the foreign people that are from out of the country, a lot of those people, there's like shippers or they have containers set up, like the Swedish for in particular. The Swedes always have a lot of them have a container, and all the Swedish guys get together and go shopping, and they share the cost of the container. So a lot of times what we find is there'll be a guy in Sweden or France or something. He's not going to swap meet, but his friend is.
Yep.
So they'll buy it, they'll pay us for it, and then they'll have their friend pick it up and ship it back for them. So we do a lot of sales with people like that where we bring stuff, and it's their only chance that they can buy. Like, what did you do, fenders? Or?
There's a 38 Deluxe hood and grill. The gentleman, I believe it's going to France.
So that's a good thing if you have your stuff. If you start kind of ahead of Hershey advertising some of your stuff that maybe you're bringing, even if it's bigger, you might find you'll get some European guys that will buy stuff and have it shipped. And we've done it many years, Argentina and Brazil and all over the place. We've sold stuff, and it's like the shipper is just set up in the swap meet and they drop it off. So it's a good way to sell some of that stuff. Australia, of course, and New Zealand and all that. So, but that was really pretty good. I noticed this year at Hershey, even more so than other, prices were stiff. I
saw a lot of 33 Ford grills that were very, very expensive.
They were stiff for what they were, but they're very popular, so they're getting harder to find. But what I was kind of seeing is that there's a lot of because of the internet and because of some of the older people or people in general that don't want to do the research, they're just putting wild numbers on stuff just so that they don't possibly sell it for too cheap. So for instance, there was a firewall that both of us walked up on, and it was a 32 Ford firewall, solid, but it had like some holes drilled or torched in it.
It was pitted on the one side.
Yeah, and
not terribly, but
very usable, very solid. And we walked up, and you asked the price. We both did. Mike didn't know that I had asked the guy earlier, and it was like 12 or 1500.
I fucked up, and I looked at the tag, and his handwriting was bad, and I thought it said $250, and he had $12.50 on it, and I offered him $200 like a dick.
And he almost chased you out.
He was like, "What did you just offer?" I was like, $200. You have $250 on it. He goes, "That's a 1." I was like, "Oh, have a good day." And I just walked out of the booth as fast as I possibly could. I just look like a jerk.
They got the pitchforks and the torches. But get this guy.
But that was not the only instance. I looked at a bunch of stuff and picked it up. You look at the tag, and you're like, "Whoo!"
And it's not that we're not willing to pay that kind of money for stuff. It's the condition. And when I talked to the guy, it was kind of like, well, we're looking around, and you see firewalls going for a lot of money, and it's like, yeah, when it's like a perfect firewall
with the stock original padding on it.
Yeah, yes, I've seen them go for $1,200, $1,500, sometimes maybe even more. But like we're talking perfect. This is not perfect, and unfortunately, he had something else there also that was a little
K-member,
and it was, I think,
$975.
Yeah, and that. Again, K-members go for that kind of money. This one had holes it was torched out on the one side, so there was a corner of the leg missing. All the rivets were burned out of it, and they just had bolts in it. So, these are all the things that when you're shopping for this stuff, yes, they do go for that kind of money, but it's usually one that's in a little better shape. So I just try and politely, just say thanks, okay, no problem, and you just go on. I don't get upset or go, sometimes we get people that I see or come in our booth that you see that are they almost huff and puff and are telling you how you're charging too much. It's like, that's what the guy thinks it's worth. Just politely say thank you, all right, and wander off, and you just keep going. But I always just try and thank people for their time. I say, okay, thanks. That's a little more. If they ask you whatever, you just say, it's a little more than I was hoping to spend on that or whatever, and just walk on your way. I try not to get into some of these guys want to have an argument. Well, that stuff's expensive, and they start kind of attacking you. Then I'll fucking come for you. And I'll tell you every fucking imperfection on your part and how it's not worth that. But generally...
Please don't come in our booth and do that.
Yeah, we try not to, I'll fucking chase you out of the booth. That's why I stay out of the booth, because the one year there was a guy that I almost knocked the fucking guy out.
Or threw the headlights on the ground and smashed them. Or their fog lights, I think.
Yeah, so...
That's not allowed in the booth for sales.
Yeah, so I just don't... That doesn't do well. So... But yeah, the prices I noticed there was a lot of stuff that was really, really stiff prices, and it's difficult for me because I think as now that we're more recognizable, I try not to negotiate much anymore because I don't want to get a bad people get rumors go around or whatever. So I actually try not to negotiate much anymore. If the price isn't in a realm of what we want to pay, whether we're making money or I want it for myself, I just walk away. Now, if we're within $50 or something and $100, whatever, like that dash was a good example. I didn't go there and offer the guy $700 off of what I wanted. Now, when he came down that much and was that eager, okay, maybe I'll try and get it for $200 less than what he said. But so most of the stuff like the instance Mike was talking about, it's like I wanted to pay $500. If he wants $1,250, I'm not gonna, like Mike did without knowing it.
It was accidental. Trust me. If the price is stiff, I don't even offer. I just look at it and keep on moving.
And the signs, as always, signs were...
And I've noticed sign guys are picking up on car parts are worth money, and there's a lot of sign guys now dabbling with car parts too. And
Yeah, they're doing the same thing and buying
which
that stuff.
you can't knock the hustle. They're doing the same thing we are. They're diversifying, which we do the same thing.
Right. Yeah, but that's the same idea where you're seeing sign guys that aren't educated on the car stuff, and they'll have a 32 grill and it's $3,000.
Yep.
And then you look at it and it's got a repop insert in it, and the sides are cut, and it's been repainted and patched and mudded up and leaded and whatever. And the guy's, because he saw another guy selling a perfect original paint 32 grill for $3K, he's got $3K on his. So it's like, it is what it is. You just keep walking. So I don't get upset about it. It's just, you usually know when you can tell by the booth that it's in if it's going to be outrageous.
Yeah.
If all the signs are insane money and there's a 32 grill there, you can almost bet it's
Just keep walking.
Keep walking. But was there anything that you thought coolest item you saw at Hershey?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Probably the item that I was most surprised about was that 32 two-door sedan. $5,600 for a 32 two-door sedan, just the body. Majority had all the garnish molding. The dash was in it. The firewall was in it.
Original black paint.
It needed patch panels like every 32 out there. Lower inch around the whole car needed patching.
Sub rails, all that.
Yeah, but very solid. The floor was still very solid.
This car was, imagine the DeLorean Roadster, but in a two-door sedan version. Like, it was straight. It wasn't all banged up. Original black paint that could be brought back.
And the paint was actually very decent from the belt line up. It was mainly like it sat in on a concrete floor or something, and the bottom got crispy, but the rest of it was actually, the roof was actually really nice on it. And it was still there Thursday when we left. I cannot believe that car did not sell.
But a friend of ours that stayed for the show today, Friday, he sent us a photo that it was sold, or last night, like late at night. Jason sent us a photo that it was sold. So at what is he, 5,600 or something?
Yeah.
Somebody probably paid $4 for that because they probably waited till the end and hit the guy. I was super tempted, but I knew if I went over there and started negotiating, I would have been coming home with a two-door body. So I opted to walk away because we have enough projects right now. But somebody got an amazing deal. So that just goes to show you that Hershey, I don't know why, possibly because it's a big item. It was hard to move if you weren't set up that way. But, man, when are you going to find a 32 two-door body that's not broken in half for that kind of money? It needed normal 32 sedan work. So I was like kind of surprised at that. And he was in the main row. He was in one of the main rows, like main aisles. It was you couldn't get any more exposure. So
that, and probably there was a Scott blower for a flathead there. That was pretty neat.
Oh, I missed that.
It was over in Orange, kind of near where Flop is.
Oh, I did not see that.
Yeah, it was like expensive.
15,000.
It was like 7 or 8.
Okay.
It had a bunch of damage to it, but it was just neat to see because you don't really. That's the kind of cool stuff you see at Hershey. It's like obscure, rare speed equipment and stuff like that. My favorite part was probably the car corral. This year, the car corral was. Every year, there's really cool stuff, but it's usually mostly pre-50 stuff in the car corral. This year, it was very eclectic. There was a ton from mid-90s down of everything. Imports, German cars, just really, really. There's only 2 32s in the entire car corral, which is very.
There was only. Oh yeah, there was the hot rod.
Oh, sorry, 3. There was a 5-window that pulled in at some point. There was a 2-door sedan and that hot rod all the way at the bottom.
Okay, I saw the 2-door, but
sometimes there's like. It's the flavor of the year because some years, was it last year or the year before, there was like a shit ton of early Corvettes.
Yeah.
And then some years there's a ton of early Fords. And this year it seemed like a very well balanced of everything.
Yeah.
It was really neat to walk through and just look at all the cool stuff that was for sale.
And looking at the market, the vehicles that I walk Mike and I walk at a different time. So he sees more than I do because we go after dinner one night. A few of us, a few of my friends, we walk the swap meet at night after dinner and just take a nice stroll. There's a bird in my office perched on the.
Oh yeah, I see that.
That's great, getting that bird out of my office. Cool, awesome. So I noticed that some of the vehicles that had sold on them was the stuff that you would not have guessed. A 70s van.
Yeah.
But that kind of shows what's hot because those vans are pretty popular right now. C10s.
Did you see the Buick Riata?
No.
There was a Buick Riata in the car crash. I saw it on.
It did not have sold on it.
I don't know.
Couldn't have.
It had 2,000 original miles. It was like insanely low.
I wonder if it was from that Port Royal estate.
I was kind of wondering that. I didn't look that close. I kind of was like,
we're way too close. There had to be with it.
Yeah, exactly.
He had like 7 of them. It had to be one of his.
Yeah, I was just super amazed by just the variety, which the AACA has nothing to do with that. It's just dumb luck that everyone brought really, really neat stuff.
And I was most tempted in the car corral, but I didn't put it on my list when we were doing that one podcast of cars that we'd like to own. But I really, since I was a high school kid, or teens and early 20s, I've always wanted one of those 300 SL, like they made them from like the early 90s to like 98 or something like that. It's a 2-door. They were a 5-liter V8 convertible. Really, really cool car. It's kind of like, the way I describe it to people, it's kind of like a convertible Fox body Mustang that Mercedes made. So it's just a super cool car, 5-liter V8, rear-wheel drive. It's pretty badass. There was a black one. Now it's in the garage. Great. We have a bird stuck in the building now.
He's just exploring.
Yeah, well, we got to get him out. So this car was like the perfect one. It was black, original paint, 40,000 original miles, fantastic condition, and it had the Motorola car phone. So for me,
drug dealer shit right there.
So for me, being a kid in high school, and growing up in the era of Biggie, Tupac, all that stuff coming up, and all those albums, and the cover albums always had like I don't know if it was a Rakim album or what, but they had it had a Mercedes like that on the front, but it's like the rapper car from the 90s, and I was like, man, that's it. So this inner teenager of mine, watching MTV and Mercedes being in them, that was it. But they're just neat cars. And for investment purposes, if you're thinking about buying a car that's going to be worth more money, like it's kind of a sports car, it's low mileage, it ticks all the boxes. And I've been thinking differently in the recent years because you see the early Ford stuff and like, what are the vehicles that go for really sought after and go for crazy money in the early Ford world? If you find in a 32.3 window that's original paint and low mileage, those are the ones that are bringing the primo dollars. So like this is that version of that, and it checks the box. It's not a 4-door, it's not a diesel non-turbo. It's the cool one. So I was tempted. It was like 16 something.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap for what it is.
It's a little to the top of the market currently for those cars, but it's probably one of the best examples you ever see. So I was like, man, I should buy that, and I could just drive it. It'll be really cool. And I'm like, where am I going to put it? When am I going to drive it? In between all the other 17 cars. Now, granted, this thing is a 90s car. You can drive it anywhere.
In the rain.
Whatever. But, then again, it's so nice. I'd probably be back to like, oh, it's raining. I really shouldn't take this thing out, whatever. So,
speaking of top of the market, the Porsches there were astronomical.
Oh, I didn't look at the prices.
$70,000, $80,000, $100,000 for late 80s, early 90s Porsches.
Yeah, they're pretty hot. I mean,
man. I forgot they were that high. I was looking at a couple. I was like, holy crap.
I wish when I was a young adult, when I used to go to the Hershey Porsche swap meet that's in the spring, I would have bought every single one of those 80s 911 project cars that I saw for like sub $10,000.
Yeah.
And that would have been fantastic.
Yes, cashing in on your early 401k.
Yeah, but that I did not have that money. It was not that smart. So,
what was your favorite thing in the swap meet?
In the swap meet, probably I didn't buy it. I saw somebody walking with it, so it wasn't even at a sale. And I don't know if it was a pre-sale thing. A guy was riding around. He had just gotten it, a punch tin Ford script sign, the big one.
Oh, wow.
That's like one of the Holy Grail signs. So it's an early punched, double-sided, with the can, but it has punched holes in it. So it's an earlier sign, non-neon. Those signs are bringing, I think they're getting up to six figures for like mint, crazy ones. But this was a beat up, would have been perfect for what I wanted. And I saw some guy that had it, and he was like putting it into his back of his car or something. They had just bought it, but that was pretty cool because that's one of those Holy Grail signs for Ford, Ford guys. That was probably the coolest thing I saw, like kind of in the wild, parts wise. And I might be getting a higher tolerance.
Yeah, we're very jaded to all this because it's what we see all the time. And I notice it walking around as I'm filming. Like what I film changes because it's like, oh, it's just a table of stuff. Like I've looked at all these parts before. I don't film as much of the parts because it's like it's not as interesting to me because we look at it all the time.
Yeah, so that was probably the coolest thing I saw out and about that was like crazy, or that was just holy crap. I didn't see a lot of crazy speed equipment or anything that was like really, really insane.
Oh, did you see the flathead Hillborn setup that was polished?
I did. Did Ron have that?
No, it was that. It's all the way in Greenfield, all the way against the car corral, the very last row. The guy's always got hot rod parts.
Yeah, okay. I didn't think
it was a either chrome or polished flathead Hillborn setup.
Don't know
I forget the price, but it was hurtful when I looked at it. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, as it should be. That's pretty rare item. I don't think there was a dual. There's some guys in Greenfield that we always see. Joe is the one gentleman that we see that's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
His buddy that he vends with, it's a younger guy. I apologize, I forgot. Dave, that's it. He had an engine that he had dropped off. I think it was like a dual overhead cam banger.
Oh, I missed that.
I don't know if it was a Howe or something wild.
Oh,
and it was sitting on the ground in the front of their booth. I'm like, did you guys just score this? Holy shit. He's like, it was a deal he worked out ahead of time. But, like, that was pretty wild because that's, like, crazy to see regardless. So that was pretty neat. But otherwise.
Did you see the Offie engine down from us?
Oh, yeah. There was. Yeah,
I did see a bunch of Offie stuff. Just, like, there was a complete engine, like, a row over from us or a couple spaces down. And then throughout the swap meet, I saw a bunch of tables with Offie engine parts on them, which is.
Yeah.
You don't really see that at swap meets ever.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the one guy that had the Offie, he sells a lot of the sprint car and old race car stuff that's near us. So he usually is a booth to hit that has really good stuff. But yeah, that was probably as far as parts go, that was probably one of my one of the only things that I really saw. Otherwise, it wasn't real crazy. This year, other years, there's lots of blowers and whatever. So. I think that was probably it. I didn't watch my own video on the top 20 tips of Hershey, and I looked at a 34 radiator on setup day, I think,
or Tuesday, really early in the week,
or Tuesday. It was Tuesday. There was a 34 radiator that was original radiator, all redone and checked. And basically ready to put in. And a guy had $800 on it. I was looking at it, talking to him, was kind of, thinking about buying it for the sedan delivery because it'll just be like, you don't have to worry about anything. You just put it in and go. And then Kate was coming, and I kind of walked a few aisles, and then she called me. I was thinking about it. She called me, and then her and I, walked the swap meet together, and I kind of just forgot about it. Not Kate's fault, just me being scatterbrained. And then the next day I'm like, I got to go back for the radiator. So of course that's the one time my dad decides to walk the swap meet with me. So we walk all the way across the chocolate field to the other side. And the guy's like, yeah, I sold that. Sorry. I'm like, damn it. So that just goes to prove if you see it and it's a good deal and you need it, you should buy it. So I failed there and broke my own rule. But that was probably the only thing that I saw and didn't get or hemmed and hauled on. There was a Kara Wilson engine stand that was like
pretty affordable.
It was pretty affordable. I think it was $1,500. Had the base, roller base, the stand, and it had all the attachments for 6-cylinder, banger, V860, and an 85 or 100 horse flathead. And it was $1,500, original red paint. It's killer. Almost bought it. I was talking to the guy for a while, and he wanted the deal, and I'm like, I just don't need to buy it right now. Like a second one, we're just getting floor space back in the shop.
What we need is more stuff on the floor.
Yeah, another big thing to roll around and get in the way. So I opted to bow out. And I know where there's some other ones that are around. So if I really want one, I can moon farted.
Yes.
He's great at that.
Thanks, dude.
Oh,
man.
boy. So that was probably the only thing that I saw and walked on that maybe I could have bought. But I think that Tudor body is probably the biggest thing that I'm like, more so than that radiator, because I'm like, man, just to buy that, and if you put that together as a car, you could have made some good money on that.
Oh, fix the scary stuff and just put it on a chassis as a roller with no engine. Be an easy sale, 100%.
Yep. So that
Do you think this year there was less vendors than normal? I think it was very similar to the year before. I don't think there was as little. The shoppers, I think, were a little light, but I think at vendors, it was about the same as last year.
I thought it was a little light, but I was also attributing that to the hurricane.
Oh,
and I'm sure the shoppers also is because of
Yeah.
that. I thought it was a little lighter because there was some Southern guys that I visit or stop by their booth because they have neat stuff that were not there. So I think it was a little bit, but not majorly.
No.
This year we kind of were fortunate that on either side of us there was a space on one side and two on the other, and we ended up renting 2 spaces just to park the Roadster and then park Mike's truck to make it a little more convenient for bringing big stuff for customers and whatnot. So
Yeah.
that worked out, and I think the two on the side of us was because of the weather, right?
They were PA tags.
Oh.
One was Jersey, or no, one was Connecticut, and the one was PA, like Zionsville, near us.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. So I don't know what the excuse was, but yeah, so I think it was a little lighter, but not crazy. I think the sounding board of the internet is making it worse. That
Yes.
There's a Facebook group for Hershey and Carlisle, and the Hershey one has turned into a lot of just people complaining or talking about the sky is falling with Hershey ending and whatever.
This is not the last year.
Yeah.
Just so you know, the lease for the Hershey swap meet is through 2028. So this is not the last.
Yeah,
just the
right?
wind.
Moon said it.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if anyone tells you this is the last year or next year's the last year, tell them to fuck off, because there's plenty
Or
of.
don't. If it's a little old lady's day, don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, use your better judgment, but the dates are set through 28. So it's not over. It's not ending. It's just people spreading rumors around.
And I want to say the one thing I wanted to cover in this with talking about swap meet, in general and the trends, we need more people to come to the swap meet and also sell.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest reasons that you're seeing the swap meets are dropping because the people are aging out, and all the younger crowd that wants to come and buy and get a deal aren't setting up and selling. And I think, yes, you could sell on the internet for sure. We're a good example. We sell on the internet more than most people do. And the amount of items we sell. And we still come out to the swap meet. We could easily stay home, not do a booth. And yes, we make some decent money at Hershey and Carlisle, but it would be a lot simpler to not do it with all the hassle and cost involved. But we do it because that's what keeps the show going. So I think that's one big thing we're missing is there's a lot of younger people that go to the show for 1 day or 2 days. They buy and they buy like crazy at the swap meet, and they don't set up and sell. And even like we're talking about, Titus is a good example. He comes from out of town, but he still sets up for a day or two, and he puts some stuff out. Even if he bought it at the swap meet, he's reselling it, whatever. There's a booth there, and there's stuff in that booth that could be bought.
And we're not saying you need to come with like what we come with.
Yeah.
A space is 10 foot wide by 30 foot deep. There's enough room for you to bring a pickup truck, 2 or 3 tables, and just set up stuff. And even if you shop for the first day or two and then you set up the last part of the week, you're still contributing to selling parts.
Yes.
You're not just using, there's so many people that just use spaces as parking spaces, and it's so annoying.
Yeah.
Because you're just literally taking up space and not contributing whatsoever.
Yeah. So I think, and there's a lot of booths where there's guys that will only bring a table full of high-end items, really good stuff, which I think is valid at Hershey because that's where that's what we're all looking for at Hershey is the good stuff. So I wish I would see more people, especially some of these resellers that are running around buying. I really wish that some of them would be setting up and selling at least for a couple days.
Yeah.
And I see some resellers at Carlisle and Hershey that we know or are friendly with that's what they do. They run around and buy good deals for the first day or two, and then they set up for the rest of the week and they are selling. And they have a ton of good stuff for sale. Sure, you're not going to steal it from them, but at least the stuff's there to be bought. And that's the only way we're going to save swap meeting in person is if people start setting up at swap meets and not just coming to rape and pillage the swap meet and then leave.
And the other thing is, you don't have to bring great stuff. There's two prime examples. Our neighbors behind us at Hershey literally bring some of the worst, not worst, they just bring stuff.
It's all the crap that they buy at auctions and flea markets when they, whatever, where you
when
buy.
They're buying pallet lots of just random junk.
They buy a box of stuff because they want one good item and then there's a random, the crap on the bottom. They dump it out on a tarp and they put a car for sale and then they just have fun and drink beer and sell $5
And our other
items.
friends that are into the forward look Mopars.
Oh, yeah.
What did they say they had a tarp of that was $1 items?
It was like they had one tarp that was like $1 and maybe another one was like $5 and $10.
He said every time he'd open his truck door, like $400 would just fall out onto the ground in ones from people buying stuff. So it's like you don't have to bring like your best stuff to sell. Some guys make, even if you pay for your spaces in your hotel just from random, everyone has random junk laying around their garages. Just bring some of that stuff. You might be surprised how much you could just sell to pay for your spaces, your fuel, your travel, all that stuff, and you're contributing to someone's experience at the swap meet.
And Hershey is one of the only places still where you see the honor system.
Yes.
So like Mike's mentioning, that family that sells the Mopar stuff that stops to see us, their spaces are not really monitored. So it's just like they put a thing on their window, drop the money in their truck, or you see these like little boxes, drop the money in the box honor system, and like they're not even staying at their space. So, but at least you're contributing. They have a space with parts for sale, and it's another space that has items for sale that you can walk and see. So like I'd rather that than nothing or a pickup truck that's just there taking up space. So I would like to see that in the future, and we're always urging friends that go to the swap meet and do these, we see it's like come out, and it's a great time. That's the other thing. It's a lot of fun walking the swap meet and visiting with your friends at their booth, or at night we all get together, or like on Thursday a lot of us, are visiting with each other at Hershey. And it's like, so like that by you just coming and swapping, doing the swap meet real quick and leaving, you're missing another aspect of the big swap meets, which is the fun of hanging out, busting balls, and
the community,
the community of it all. So that's always really, really good.
So I think that's it for this one. We beat Carlisle and Hershey to death.
Yes. So swap meet season's basically over. It's a great time. Make sure you make your plans to come visit if you can, because it is not just because we're there selling. It really, Hershey especially, is just something everybody needs to experience if you're into the old car thing. Whether you're shopping for a part or you're just going to walk around and experience it.
And that's one of my favorite things when we're at Hershey, when a viewer comes up and says, "I've never been here before. I watch your videos. I took your advice. This is the best swap meet." It just feels so good that people are learning about the swap meet and coming out and enjoying it, because it's like nothing you've ever seen. If you haven't been there, you have to make a point to go.
And and AACA gives us absolutely nothing. In fact, they barely know who we are.
Yes.
But we still promote their event, and it's a great time,
Yes.
and you should come. So this is unsolicited. So
yes.
Thank you guys for listening. As always, we're doing podcasts once a week now.
Yep.
And you can watch the video editions on our YouTube channel. And we do videos Monday. I forgot.
This has been like 7 years. Sunday, Tuesday, Friday.
Tuesday, Friday, Sunday.
Oh, it's been a while since you said that. You totally messed it
Yeah, I messed it up.
That's so funny.
Mondays we don't do any videos, so you shouldn't watch. But you could watch an old video. But I don't even know what's going on. I don't even know what day today is. So sorry about that, guys. But thank you for listening. We really enjoy it. Make sure you leave a review and subscribe and all that good stuff. We really appreciate it. So we'll catch you later.
See you.